So I have the pleasure of presenting our next speaker, Dr. Amarande Murisier. So Amarande did her PhD in the Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences of Western Switzerland, and she was interested in developing analytical methods for therapeutic for protein characterization. And currently she's occupying the position of Bioanalytical Scientist at Debiopharm. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. So first of all, I'm really happy to be there today. Some years ago, I was sitting at your place, and I was listening to great talk to amazing scientists, and I was looking forward to be at that position, and I am at that position today, and I'm really happy to be able to share to you how I manage, or I did my transition from academia to this position of bioanalytical scientist in Debiopharm. So before starting, I would like to thank the organization. I think there is something really important that all of us have to do today. It's to do some networking. When I was preparing that presentation, I found that quote on the internet that I found really relevant, saying that networking is not only connecting people, it's connecting people with ideas, and people with opportunities. And this is really important, and I strongly recommend you, even if you're shy, even if you're introvert, to talk to the people that are present today. And for that, we are lucky to have several breaks. We have coffee breaks, lunch breaks, and for sure the apéro, so I strongly recommend you to do your networking today. So before going to this best part of the day, the apéro, there is still some presentation and some discussion that have to be done. So is it one of the traditions here in the phases of industrial research for the speaker to present their career path? And my career path is starting here in Valais. So I grew up in the mountains. You can see on the pictures Champelac, which is a really nice area in Valais. So I grew up there in the mountain. And just next to this amazing place, there is a little village called Orsières. And my father was the pharmacist of this small village. One of the dreams of my father was to have one of the children being able to take care of the pharmacy. He had 7 children, and none of them wanted to do that job. So I had the feeling that it was my duty, so I started the studies of pharmacy at the University of Geneva. So I moved from Valais to Geneva. And as you may know, because I have seen some pharmacy students here today, that you have some internships that have to be done during your pharmacy studies. And the first internship is an internship that has to be related to research. It can be in academia, it can be in industry, it can be abroad. You can do whatever you want, but it has to be somehow related to research. And I was looking for a position, and I really wanted to go to industry already at that time. And I found an internship position in a small company called Debiopharm, which was also located in Martigny, so really near the place where I grew up. So I did 5 months internship there, and I discovered what was the pharma industry. And I completely fell in love with pharma industry. The slogan of Debiopharm is "We develop for patients." And for me, it was not a lie. I really have seen the people working there that they were really believing in that. And they were working hard to aim that goal. So I was pretty convinced that I wanted to do that in my life, and I didn't want to join the pharmacy of my father, that I didn't want to go in a retail shop. So when I was doing this internship, I asked to my managers, what can I do to enter that company? And I was doing the Master of Pharmacy, and they told me, you just have to finish your studies, and then you can come inside the company. But the people who say me that, they all had a PhD. So I was like, you're saying that I don't need a PhD, but you have one. Well, you have one, you have one. So I decided to do a PhD, and spoiler alert, in reality, you don't necessarily need a PhD. Today, my manager hasn't even a master's degree, and he's doing great science as well. So if you don't want to go for the PhD, don't do it. But for me, I had the feeling that it was what I had to do. Then, during my studies, there was one of the courses that were given to the pharmacy student that was about biopharmaceuticals. And I really appreciated that course about those drugs that are biologically produced and that are mainly used in oncology or infectious disease. So I started my PhD at the University of Geneva, so in this ESPSO school, under the supervision of Debiopharm and Jean-Luc Vautet, who are the most famous analytical scientists that you can find in Switzerland and in Europe. And I was incredibly lucky because based on their knowledge, I was able to develop a lot of different methods for the characterization of those biopharmaceuticals. And also, as you can see, I worked in a collaboration with Roche, and it is thanks to the networking that was doing my supervisor, Debiopharm. So again, the networking is highly important. And thanks to him, I was able to do an internship in Roche in Pennsburg in Germany. And as you can see, it was in 2020. So during COVID time, looking at Angela Merkel talks on Sunday to know what was the new guidelines for COVID. So it wasn't that easy, but I was lucky to work with Roche. And it's funny because most of the molecules that the previous speaker talked about, I analyzed them in the laboratory. So see, all the world can be small sometimes. So then I finally succeeded in my PhD. So I had the PhD in June 2022. And so the question was, now I have the PhD, and I always knew that I wanted to go in the pharma industry. What can I do? So in pharma industry, there is three main areas. You can do production, research and development, or quality control on regulatory affairs. But me, I knew that I wanted to do some research and development. So I started looking for a job, and it's also something that I suggest to you. It's really to look on LinkedIn, what are the possibilities, or is involving in your field, or maybe not in your field, because for me it was sure that I wanted to do something related to my PhD, but it can also not be the case. Maybe that you did something during your PhD, and you will do something completely different in your career, and it's totally fine as well. So what I did is that I found a super interesting job offer on LinkedIn, which was for something related to pharmacokinetics with a lot of home office. So for me, it was fine because I was super happy with my life in Geneva, a super nice flat in Geneva, so I didn't want to quit that environment. But before applying to the job, someone suggested me to send an email to the Debiopharm people that I met several years ago when I did my internship. It's what I did. I sent an email to my previous supervisor saying, hey, I found that job offer on LinkedIn. What do you think about that job position? Open question. And the woman answered me, it really doesn't seem interesting at all. I don't suggest you to apply for that position. It's really far away from the laboratory. You just ended your PhD. You're still close from the lab. I know you. It will not be the right position for you. But I know someone in the company that is looking for a senior lab technician. And I know you're a PhD, but maybe try to reach that person and see what that person can offer to you. And it's what I did. And even if the job title was senior lab technician, they adapted the position for me as scientist. So again, it's an advice that I can give you. Even if you are not checking all the boxes in the application, don't worry. If you're good enough, they will take you and they will arrange everything for you. I know that we have today some talent acquisition managers, so maybe it can be also interesting to talk to them from the point of view of the recruiter to see how they can adapt some job position for some specific candidates. So this is how my journey with Debiopharm started. So maybe you don't know about Debiopharm, so I will just explain a bit about the company. So Debiopharm is a group, so there are several companies inside that group. It's family-owned and financially independent and working mainly in oncology and bacterial infections. And in this group, we have manufacturing, development, but also investment in digital health, and also they are investing in startups. And I know that last year already there was some speaker from Debiopharm. We already talked a lot about Debiopharm. So this is the building I'm working in. So I'm working currently in Martigny, so in Debiopharm drug research and manufacturing. And this is my laboratory. And maybe if I can say something about Debiopharm, it's that it's really growing today. Because if you look at the building I'm working in, it's a brand new building from 2020, and they are already increasing with one floor of that building. And in the parking, you can see they are also building a completely new structure in order to have all the laboratory inside the same place. Because for the moment, we have formulation at one place, synthesis chemistry at one other place, and analytical chemistry in one other building, and they want to put everything together, which, according to me, it's a great idea. So to speak a bit more about Debiopharm, this is the business model. So basically, they are discussing a lot with the biotech or the big pharmas or universities in order to find some drugs that are interesting. Then they are developing those drugs, and then they are selling the drugs to big pharmas, for instance. They also are doing some production of their own drug. But which is really interesting nowadays, it's that Debiopharm is also investing in their internal knowledge, in their internal chemistry. So they have good chemists that are today developing the drugs. So I was speaking about network. The network of Debiopharm is also very important. As I mentioned, Debiopharm is several companies. So there is one which is based in Lausanne, which is called Debiopharm International, and one based in Martigny, so Debiopharm Manufacturing and Research. And I first started to work in Lausanne, and then I moved to Martigny. We can see that Debiopharm is making some collaboration with universities, but also with HES or with the School of Apprentices in Valais. So they have a strong network, and they will be able to collaborate with your research group if you are looking for investment, for instance. So here are some key figures from 2022, and I found that slide really interesting. So the first thing that we can see is that there is strong differences between DPRM in Martigny and DPI. And this is normal, because DPRM, it's mainly production site. So that's why we can also see that there is less graduated people working in Martigny than in Lausanne. And there is also one number that is really surprising to me, is the number of people having a PhD in Lausanne. 43% of the people working in Debiopharm in Lausanne have a PhD. This is huge. When you're doing a PhD, you can have the feeling to be some kind of unique, because most of your family doesn't have a PhD. But here in that company, 1 person on 2 has a PhD. For me, that sounds completely crazy. Also, as I'm a pharmacist, there is another number that I think is interesting. It's to see that 10% of the people working in both companies are pharmacists. So now we'll speak more about what I'm doing inside my job in this Debiopharm Manufacturing and Research in Martigny. So in Martigny, as I mentioned, they are doing the production, meaning also that they are doing the distribution of the drug that they are producing. But as I mentioned before, they are also developing some very innovative projects that are called Abiling and Multilink. Because if at the beginning Debiopharm was a company mainly investing in small molecules, this is not the case nowadays, because they also developed a lot on antibody drug conjugates. So it's kind of more related to what I did during my PhD, but I was ahead as a bioanalytical scientist for small molecules. And my job is mainly in the characterization of the drugs that they are producing, mainly small molecules, but as they are developing those ADC, I'm also trying to help with those ADCs. So what is bioanalysis? The bioanalysis is part of the analytical chemistry, so it's still more or less related to what I did during my PhD, but is more a quantitative measurement of the drugs and their metabolite in biological systems. So what are those biological systems? They are mainly blood fluids, such as plasma or serum, coming from human or rat or mouse or whatever. And then as those samples are kind of dirty, we have to clean those samples. And to do so, we will use some sample processing techniques, such as solid phase extraction or protein precipitation. This is requiring a lot of lab work activities that I not really like. So that's why I'm super happy that in Debiopharm they have a pipetting robot who is able to do most of the lab work for us. So this is really cool. Then, once you have the sample, you have to use instrumental techniques. So here it's the representation of the main instrument that we are using, which is liquid chromatography coupled to tandem mass spectrometry. And during my PhD, I learned that technique a lot with the highest specialist in Switzerland, so I know a lot about those instruments. So maybe I will pass on that, but it's to explain a bit more what is bioanalysis, so in vitro test, in vivo test, but we can discuss that later on. For me, this is most interesting for you, maybe. As I mentioned, I've been hired as a bioanalytical scientist. And if you look at my activities, this is the real number that are based from my planning. I can see that I'm doing less than 50% of bioanalytical activities that I've been hired for. So what I'm doing the rest of the time, I'm developing new technology, implementing new platform in Debiopharm. And I can do that because I did the PhD before, so I have some knowledge to how we can develop some new technologies. Then, as I mentioned, the Debiopharm is developing those ADC, and I have the knowledge about that, so I'm helping a lot the colleagues about that. So nearly 20% of my time is dedicated to just helping the people working with biopharmaceuticals inside the company. And then I have for sure some administrative tasks, report, planning, and so on. But I'm super happy that it's representing only less than 10% of my activities. Because I was afraid to enter in the pharma industry and to not be able to do science anymore. And as you can see, in my activities, this is not the case. I'm still doing a lot of research. So if I can give you, again, some advices, is that there is some pros and cons going to, from academia to industry. But you don't have to be afraid. Just try, just go, and you will see, because you can never know before you're going to the industry. And then there is a lot of different advices that I can give you. The first things that were already discussed before is that you have to know what you want. And then, once you know what you want, you can choose the company in which you want to apply for. And also, there is something else that I want to highlight, is that based on your master or your bachelor or your PhD, you have some technical skills. But never during your studies, someone taught you about the soft skills, and they are also incredibly important. So know your soft skills and develop them. So I'm going to the next slide. Debiopharm is hiring. There is some open position at Debiopharm. So please go on our website and check what are the opportunities. Please keep in mind that even if you're not checking all the boxes, that doesn't matter. Also, in the Debiopharm, we are doing a lot of collaboration with the academy through the IDEAL program that was presented last year. But also, there is some possibilities to do internship, which are called pieds à l'étrier. And as an example, I will talk about one of the PhD students that did the PhD with me, so in chemistry, and who is now doing an internship in intelligence artificial at the Debiopharm. So it's really meaning that whatever you did before, you can join the company sorry, going as fast as I can. You can join the company in a position or in an internship, whatever, but please look at what the opportunities that we can offer. So this is just a recall from the IDEAL program from last year. This presentation was registered and is on YouTube if you want to have more information about the IDEAL program. So based on that, I really thank you for your attention, and I also thank all the people that make possible my presence today there. So thanks a lot, and if you have questions, I will be sitting right there in a few minutes.
So thank you, Amarande, very much for your nice talk.